Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast, where together we'll embrace the plans we did not make yet, unfold businesses and lives that are so much greater in wealth in all ways than any business or life plan could ever achieve. My wish is that you make intuition your most trusted advisor. So, buckle up, get present, and let's go. So welcome back, listeners. This is like a marathon of podcast episodes this week. This is my fourth episode and it's only Thursday. And I end off the last episode this week with a bang. I ended off with a really, really powerful woman called Leanne Minshull, who I met probably about a year and a half ago or so, I think.
About 18 months ago.
Something like that. So I want to let you know who Leanne is. And I also want to let you know why I was inspired to bring Leanne to the podcast. So Leanne was in the mastermind for a year and then finished and, went and lived life and then wrote me a message and said, my comfort zone is so big. It's become so big. Let me be of service in some way, whatever way that, that comes to you. And that message arrived, I think it was the day before I was about to run a retreat.
Right.
3 weeks ago, and I was like, this is just perfect. And Leanne came and did a piece to the Catalyst Mastermind, and one of the participants said she was so affected by it that it actually felt like, and nobody's religious here, but she felt like it was like as if Leanne was testifying. And she had a really, really big experience. So it inspired me to share Leanne with the greater community. So let me tell you a little bit about Leanne. So Leanne says that she likes to examine social and organizational structures and then to push the boundaries that need to be lent on. I mean, there's nothing small about Leanne. This has required me to walk into my personal fears until the fear, as all illusions do, fades and disappears. From a background point of view, Leanne's got a law degree and a master's of law. She's been involved in environmental and social justice activism, from concreting herself into a 44-gallon drum to halt work at a uranium mine, to being an associate director of a boutique ratings agency, to being sued by a large corporation and then seeding transnational litigation against climate crimes. She says that she's worked in politics directly as a senior advisor for a federal senator and the chief of staff for a state minister, and outside of politics, helping to shape the landscape upon which politicians can make their decisions. And most recently, and this was the time that we were working together, Leanne co-founded a political party aimed at pushing the boundaries of traditional party structures that are hierarchical and exclusionary. She ran in the federal election just gone for the Tasmanian Senate. She didn't win, but she is working towards future elections, and her current project is launching her career as a stand-up comedian. And she signs off, Leanne Minshull, publican and failed politician. So welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Giselle.
It's great. I just know that big things are going to happen from this episode. No pressure. So you were somebody that I really, really loved being with, because you would just eat up the process. You would eat it up, right? And the result of eating up the process was a lot of freedom. Yeah. So can you talk to us about you? And actually, I need to say this. You were in the program when the theme of the year in 2021 was nothing but miracles. Miracle is defined as a shift in perception from fear to love.
Yeah.
And really that was your experience, right? What was fear moved into love? What was fear moved into love?
Yes.
And you were running for politics, like those things normally go together. In that environment?
No, not normally. And it was actually part of the reason why I remember when I first spoke to you at our first, when we had a hour's call or something, just to we were when we went through that first introductory call.
Yeah.
And I explained to you that I have always worked in or around politics or social movement, or, you know, using all different types of tools. And I really felt drawn to get back, or compelled to get back into directly engaging in politics in Australia, because I'd been overseas for a few years. But I didn't want to get back into the toxic nature of politics, because so I felt like this responsibility, which is odd for me because I don't usually feel responsible. I usually just feel compelled, which is a difference. But I felt a responsibility, but also a weight. I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to have all the anger. I didn't want to go back into working in traditional ways. And so you said, what if it was your joy rather than your burden? And that one comment kind of kept me on track for the whole year, apart from anything else, because every time that I'd start getting really angry, or I'd start working out, you know, how to use my old tools, because I was
which would have been
just sort of Machiavellian divisiveness, you know. So and I was good at that, and it's hard to go from being really good at something to being an apprentice at something new. But it has to be done if you want to change things or want to change yourself. Like you're going to hit times, I think, in your life where you're going, okay, well, I'm an absolute master at the old way, but do I want to keep on being really good at something that's not right? Or do I jump in and become an apprentice at, 55? Actually, I'm 57. I always forget how old I am, but I suppose at the time I was 55. To do something different. So that's what I did. And every time I felt myself either being cranky or angry, or thinking, I could stitch up this, or I could get that person by doing this other thing, I would just say, oh, hang on, no, that's just bad energy, and that's going to be a burden if you do that rather than your joy. So I'd think about doing something that brought joy rather than the heavy, burdensome things. So it was for me personally, it was very liberating.
Already, when these episodes create themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a list of questions to ask you. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it's not planned.
No.
And so I'm always watching, well, what's happening here? What's happening here? And already, the humility that you've demonstrated about letting go of being the master of those old Machiavellian ways.
Yeah.
At a time when you're actually creating a new political party and running for Senate, and instead you chose humility, because to be the apprentice requires humility.
Yes.
So normally that doesn't go hand in hand with creating a new political party in a year that you're running for in a federal election. Like, humility doesn't normally go there.
No.
Right? So what I'm seeing already is I feel like there are going to be some really heavyweight people listening to this episode who this is going to be quite provocative for them, and and introspective about what ways are they showing up kind of in the old Machiavellian way.
Yeah.
And it's I feel like it's going to be really provocative. So wonderful.
Well, it's interesting because I've had time to reflect on the election itself, the election campaign that we ran. So if I was thinking about it, like, it's definitely a net positive, absolutely. But I always look at what's been done. Like, I've never been frightened of failing. That's not one of my fears. Well, I suppose that I've just got a different view on what failure is. So you could never take on a seemingly unwinnable environmental battle, and lots of the ones that I've been involved with, I knew that we wouldn't get a short-term win from it. Like, I knew we wouldn't. And so from that perspective, I mean, no one gets up in the morning and goes, I hope I fail today. But, I've never been frightened of taking on things that I might not get what people would perceive as an immediate win. But I think that, and I've also got slightly COVID foggy brain.
Yes. Hearing you. So,
but I think what I'm saying is, though, it is good to go from, I may have gone slightly too far with dropping all of my old ways, which led to a campaign that was perhaps less provocative than it could have been. However, what I was saying is like a net positive. If I had to do one or the other, I've still come out way ahead.
Yeah.
And the party itself has come out way ahead.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at like what are the things that could have been done slightly differently, I think I was so conscious of not operating from a bad space. And also I had it in my head, one of our funders that we first got, you know, they gave us $50,000 and said, take that, but don't run after the environment vote. So I stayed completely away from climate, which is bizarre given that I've spent 30 years fighting for it, which is also bizarre because since when have I ever listened to somebody that just because they're a donor? Like, I'm truthful and honest with donors, and I'm pretty good, I've worked out over this journey at raising money, but it's always because I'm really honest. But I listen to them, like, so I think that I'd listened. So if, you know, people listen to this and they're thinking about going from the master to the apprentice, and this isn't the first time I've done it, but this is the first time I've done it so wholeheartedly. and because I've been in an arena which is super not controversial, what's the word I'm looking for, adversarial. It's very adversarial. So I'm glad that I didn't. Like, if it was a choice between a slightly better campaign but not keeping the integrity of the purpose of doing politics differently, I'm really happy with where we've landed.
Yeah.
But I think if the next time I do this, because I'll inevitably, I'm not saying I'll start another political party, but there'll be another thing where I just go, oh, okay, I can learn more here. I think I'll just take a little bit more of my old skills through with my new skills. But this time I had to do it. I just had to.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you had to go down this way to then come back, like next time we'll come back into more balance, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's just making sure, is it coming from fear? Is it fueled by fear, or is it fueled by love? And love isn't always, you know, butterflies and rainbows and listening to others and taking on others people's advice. And like love can be bloody provocative.
Yes, absolutely. So
love can be really uncomfortable and can disturb.
Really good. That's a good point. Like, that's exactly that's exactly where I perhaps got the balance wrong. I was just like really listening and really facilitating. But having said that, because of that, some really great things came out of it. And one of the best things is that we could have looked back after the election and said, we're able to look back after the election and go, that was a campaign that was run in completely a different way than any other campaign I've ever been involved with. And that we all held space for each other and also held each other to account when we had to. And so to make that a little bit, to give you a concrete example, one of the things when you're under pressure anywhere, but particularly I've noticed in politics and NGOs, is that the pressure will amp up, and then people will start to, there'll be someone or something that everybody will turn to. So we all hate the media because the media isn't giving us enough attention, or we all hate, you know, Mary, the volunteer who's not doing a job properly enough, and it feeds into its own energy. And every time I heard somebody start to go down that track, even if partially they were right, I would just listen to them and I'd let them run out. And then I'd come back and say something very, you know, yes, the media can be frustrating sometimes. How about we try this thing? Whatever it was, I would accept and then bridge and then content, like convert to whatever the, you know, the conversation was that I thought was a more productive one. And what I really noticed was that everybody started doing that. So rather than create a culture where we were all piling on, and, you know, there's been studies I remember reading years ago where there's certain parts of your brain that are lit up when you gossip with each other and because it bonds you. And if you think about it, that does happen when you, especially when you're younger, and that's a way that we create tribes. And gossip most of the time isn't very positive. But it also actually happens with sporting teams and fans at games. Like, we all feel bonded to the person beside me that normally we'd have nothing in common with, other than we want the Tigers to win the final. So I was thinking, it's a thing. It's a human thing apart from a political thing. So that's what I meant by holding each other to account. It wasn't sitting down and saying, now you shouldn't be like this, or we've had to have a talk with you. I didn't let it get to the point where an intervention was required. We just did it naturally. And then that kind of took on its own energy. And as a result of that, on election night, for example, I've been at election parties. I've been at Labor election parties and I've been at Greens election parties. I've never been at a Liberal election party. And at those parties, your whole mood is tied to the result that the party itself is getting. So, you can be happy overall if there's a more progressive government, but the mood of the night and the crowd swings on who gets booted out in your own party and who gets in. So at election night, we had here at our pub, and I looked around and I thought, I've never seen such a diverse group of people. So there was women who were like, really wealthy older ladies. There was union delegates from the CFMEU. There were hippies. There were like pretty corporate people. There were a bunch of coppers that I know. Like, it's really diverse, and people were screaming with delight at every good thing that happened that was completely not related to the fortunes or misfortunes of our party. So I just thought, yeah, okay, we have created something. And it takes a lot to create what we've just done. And so I'm not sure, I've got to have a little rest and then get back into it and decide what's next. But that's a political culture I've never seen.
I want to ask you what was the cause of that, but before you answer, I know that one of the causes was what you just described. You talked about when you bonded first of all by accepting your current reality, right? You weren't judging. You weren't judging the lay of the land. You were in acceptance. This is where we're at, and then you bridged it, and then you created a new way, right?
Yeah.
So just the fact that connection was created from a place originally from a place of acceptance, not resignation, but acceptance and not judgment, is what created that, the diversity of people, from hippies to, really wealthy women to politicians to whatever. That's one of the causes, right? Because acceptance it welcomes, it doesn't divide.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, which
That's
is
right.
And you talked about the adversarial nature of politics that is divisive. You didn't come in from that place, so that's definitely one of the causes. What else? What else was?
I think the thing is too, because I was talking to an old friend in the Labor Party movement, not Labor Union movement, and he was saying, "Well, Leanne, I'm just an old collectivist." And I said, so am I. And I said, and I'm tribal, but I'm not tribal to a party. I'm tribal to humans, and I'm tribal to ideas. Yeah. And so it's a new form of tribalism, because I think humans, that we are tribal. But if you have that negative manifestation of it, where, I even remember it growing up in my family. We had this huge family with lots of cousins and everyone. And you always used to say, have internal fights, but then we'd have this tribalism like, well, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, if your family, you're right. And that was comforting in a way, but I always also questioned it, because a lot of the times we were just wrong, man. We were really wrong. So, not wrong, we weren't violent or anything like that, but there were times where I think we could have had a more robust examination of the way we were operating.
Yeah.
And then but I knew the comfort of that. I know the comfort of being in a tribe. And I think that's part of the going from the expert to the apprentice. It's also on a personal level, going from the comfort of a tribe to creating something new was really, really super challenging. But creating a tribe of people who are attracted to ideas and values rather than a set of rules and a party logo was what helped us create that. But, it is really new. Like it's so new. Who knows where it's going to go to? Yeah.
Yeah. So now I want to go to, what was it in you that, talk to us about, because I know there was a lot where you moved fear into love, you know, that allowed you to do what you've just talked about?
Yeah.
What was it that moved?
Well, it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine. I've got a friend that I've spoken to for about, I don't know, 25 years. And she's a lot like you in that she's been a coach for 25 years. But I originally went to see her in Byron when she was charging $50 for psychic readings, you know. And I was thinking about this after I spoke to her because there's some parallels in your life story. Her parents, she lost both her parents in a car crash when she was 15 or 16.
Wow.
And she ended up going as a young, like 17 or 18, and going to Nepal and spending a lot of time there. She spends a lot of time back there now and meditating for like years. So that's where her journeys come from. And because she knows me so well and she also, like my daughter has spoken to her for 15 or 16 years. When I reconnected with her only a few weeks ago, she just went, and, you know, I said, I can't believe it. And she said, yeah, Leanne, this is your pattern. You always pick your fears. And if they're getting in your way, you just walk into them. You just walk through them.
I love
and
that.
She said, this has been a really big one, girlfriend. She said, but you jumped off and you didn't know where you were going to land. And so that's true. So part of it was just that, you know, getting back to feeling the responsibility, which is something I don't normally feel. And then thinking about, you know, how to go forward with that. And then realizing that the only way to do it, I mean, I lost a lot of the driving force in me. I lost a lot of the anger and the hate over the past 5 years. And I actually don't even know what that came from, a lot of it. It was, I mean, one thing I realized is that when you're angry, you can only hold anger for so long and eventually it'll wear off. But if you love something, it actually can't wear off. You can't, I mean, you can lose romantic love, I know that. But if you deeply and honestly love a thing or a person or the planet or whatever it is, you just can't give up on it. You can't walk away and say, I'm done with you now. Whereas you can always put down your anger. So I guess I started from that perspective, thinking about what is it that keeps people going. And it was also because of my fear of what was coming in terms of, you know, environmental disruption, social disruption, health disruption. I mean, this was before the plague, but, you know, we knew that there was going to be something like it. And just thinking what kind of processes will help us as a community through that breakdown or that collapse or whatever we want to call it. And one thing I knew is that you couldn't have a lot of leadership that was leading from hate. You needed leadership from another human emotion or force, and that love was the strongest one. So that's where I started. It was just an intellectual thing, actually.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, you know, maybe start with yourself, Leanne, work out how you can work in a way that's more generous and more loving rather than, you know, more strategic. Or, I mean, love is strategic as well. That's stupid. I don't want to do, you know,
Yes.
but yeah. So that's where it started. And then this really came to me when I started doing the work with you, is just understanding the power and the freedom, because that's also something I've always chased as well. Like, I just love the feeling of freedom. I love it. I love having options. And, you know, I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and she's just turned 60 and I'm 57. And she just started, and we're talking about all the things we could do. And she just started laughing and said, isn't it great that we're this age and we still totally believe that we've got all the options in the world? But so I've always loved the feeling of being free, and realized when I started doing work with you, how much room you made for with freedom once you started to get rid of your fear.
Yes.
And how much room fear takes up. It takes up so much room.
Yes. Yes. 100%. 100%. I was talking about this in another episode, and I have a client who's been sober. Actually, we've just finished, and he decided to become sober before he started working with me. And before coming sober, so much room was taken up. like with, shame, and what was the word he used? He used this word, not hangover, anxiety.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
How you feel the day after.
Oh, that's perfect.
Isn't that anxiety?
Yeah.
And this guy, I seem to refer, he's going to listen to this episode. I seem to refer to him a lot in these episodes. Like through him, I now have this new expression, multiple streams of joy and income. Multiple streams.
Right.
So he has multiple streams of joy and income. He's not just does one thing. He's got all these other things that because he's got the room for it now.
Yes.
There's space inside of him now.
Yeah.
Because that addiction that he had, and then the emotional habit of the anxiety and the shame, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
It's so cool. So yes, I think love is the most powerful strategy.
It is. Yeah.
You know what? It's like, so far, love is provocative and love is the most powerful strategy, really.
Yeah.
That's what's here. And you did not only put the focus on the outside of the environment, like how can I influence the environment? You had integrity. You said, I can only influence the outside environment if I shift the anger and the fear,
Who I am.
the freedom within myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. 100%. And the other thing is that I've found anyway is that I feel like I'm on the other side. So again, just to give a couple of concrete examples, this one, Giselle, but when I first started with you, I had massive problems with my own image, and I just wouldn't get my photo taken. And then, it only took us one session. It was a combination actually of a session with you and then watching some activists do something. I don't think it was the Ukraine war, because I don't think it was on them, but it was something like people being super brave.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, really, Leanne? Really? Are you going to stop? You've got all of this privilege and all of these skills.
Yeah.
And you're not going to use them because you think you don't want to look at yourself? Like, fuck. Sorry, it's part of my language, but it's just like, just get over it.
Yeah.
And I also listened to Scott Ludlam talking, an ex-Greens and retired Green senator, he used to be a Green senator, and he's an author. And he's just written this really amazing book. And I was listening to a podcast with him, and he said, just pick something. Like, you're probably sitting at home now thinking, I should do something. Just do it. Just pick it. Just do it. And I was just like, right, that's 3 signs I've had. I'm just going to do it. So, within weeks, I had billboards with my face on it. I was driving around with my face on the side of my car saying, vote 1 Leanne Minshull. It was insane. And so, yeah. Yeah, some of those ones were easy, but the more deep-seated ones were more difficult. So I still drop into, like, since the election, I thought, well, because I used to be very involved with the Greens, and I thought, and I still have lots of lovely friends in the Greens, and I still whoop with delight when they win something, because I think they care about the planet a lot. But I also knew that, some of them would be very cranky at me for trying something different, and that if what my worst possible fear would be that I'd lose some of my community. They'd try to undermine me during my quest. And then I would get a vote that they saw that was low enough for them to ridicule, and then that they would do so in the public square.
Yeah.
So all of those things happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that fear was deeper and stronger and more public than the one I had to get through about my image.
Yeah.
But that fear's also cleared a lot more than what my image did for me. So, like, clearing that image fear.
Really?
So, yeah, well, it's because it was such a block, because you can put that onto so many other parts of your life. You can think, what it is really is humiliation, or feeling like, so. Yeah.
And rejection. And rejection.
Yeah. So, like, the first part I dealt with by going, this isn't actually rejection, it's clearing space for other people to be, like, all of this stuff's about freedom and space and what's right for you at the time as well, because I felt like rather than seeing that shift in my community, don't see it as a loss, see it as a shift. And the people who are no longer interested in having a friendship with you, don't see that as a loss, see it as making space for people who are more appropriate, both for me and for them.
Yeah.
So again, I actually don't have to try hard to stay out of judgment because it's not one of my things. I've got plenty of neuroses, but judgment's not one of them. So that was good. So that's the first thing. That's okay. Your community's fallen away. That's fine. And then,
and I know, and if I may interrupt, are you going to go on to another one now, or are you going to finish off that story?
No, I was going to go on to another one.
You know, there's because I know that on the other side of humiliation and rejection was another experience that you had from other people. What was that?
Yes. So, well, I was just blown away by how many people that I didn't even know existed that just lived in my own, like in my own neighborhood. So I got support from all over the place, like, from the mainland, from friends overseas were reconnecting with me, to people who I'd never met before, even though they lived in the same electorate, and amazing people that I otherwise never would have met if I hadn't have made space for these people to come into it. And also a lot of support from people who were, I just found that, especially with, because this is a different sort of leadership. It's starting from nothing. I've had leadership positions before, but people have given me that, I've applied for a position that's already been created. So when you step into that, you've got, they're still hard, they're difficult, but you've got organisational structure, you've got organisational legitimacy, you've got resources, you've got hard power because you can hire and fire people, you've got media attention because you've already got a platform. So I had nothing other than an idea and a compulsion. And that kind of leadership is really different. I've never done this before. And what I've found is the amount of people who'll step in behind you and just say, thanks for doing this. I didn't even know that this is what I needed, was really, really amazing. And that's why.
Vulnerable leadership, right?
Yeah, it is.
Vulnerable leadership, as opposed to what you were talking about before when the position's already created. Like, you created this, it didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing when you step into vulnerable leadership, the support? You might get the ones that go and humiliate.
Yeah.
Which you did.
Yeah.
But then you get the ones that go, wow, total respect.
Yes. And also, I realised that public humiliation, although I wouldn't go out and put it on my shopping list, it's actually not that bad. Right. Like, it's actually not that, for me, for some other people, but for me, I always thought it would be one of the worst things that could possibly ever happen. And people have always, I've always been seen as somebody who will like get in and get something done and win, or go some way towards whatever the end goal is. And I still think I'm there, actually. I still think that this has got a long way to go, the type of political network or structure or party or whatever you want to call it that I'm setting up, that I've set up, that I helped set up. It wasn't just me, obviously, but it was, we've got a party registered in Tasmania, and federally, the amount of people who know about us now is about 4 times as much as the people who knew about us before the election. And there's, even in the last 2 weeks of the election, people were kind of, donating money and asking what they could do. And so we really got known during that process. And it puts us in a really good position to do the next thing, which is really different than if I'd just gone, I'm going to get myself elected. That's the 6th seat that I want. I wouldn't have done do you know what I mean? I would have done a very, very different 18 months, very different. But that's why not getting the seat isn't the be all and end all at all, because there's a much longer view and a much longer strategy. So, but having said all of that, of course, some people, even some well-intentioned people, like people in the media went, oh God, you must be disappointed, thought you'd do heaps better. And I say, well, that's actually really lovely that you thought that you had so much faith in me. But no, this is pretty much what you get when you start something new, unless there's specific circumstances around it. And so that was really great. And that far outweighed the moments of humiliation that I got. And when I had because you never break through a fear this easily, like I don't want to pretend that this has been like, oh, I just had to walk there and it was all great. But the waking up at 3:00 in the morning after the election and thinking, did we do well enough? Have I just wasted 18 months? I feel so embarrassed that, who used to be my friend is tweeting stuff like, oh, you didn't even get as much as the cannabis party, and they didn't even run a campaign and stuff like that publicly. That voice wasn't that loud. And I was able to take that out and actually say, where are you coming from, voice? I know this might sound crazy to people, but I've always tried to listen to, like, especially the bad, like the negative parts, just compartmentalize it and kind of look at it like it's an interesting voice. Like, why are you here saying this? What service are you providing me? Actually, not much at all. So you can just pipe down. But the voice might come back 3 nights later when I woke up early. But, here we are. It's less than a month later. I'm 10 days into my COVID, and I haven't woken up for at least 8 or 9 days thinking about a bad result or you know what I mean? So, like, it's up and down, but it's way more up. I'm going on an up trajectory overall for the whole process and the whole thing about breaking through fear. But I wouldn't like to pretend that it was just a straight road. It's up and then down a little bit, and then up again and then down a little bit. So, but having lived through that, having sat there at the beginning and thought, what would be my worst circumstance, and having all of them come true, that's what I meant when I contacted you and said, my comfort zone is so big now, I feel like I could do anything. Give me a yell if there's something I can do, because that's what happens, right? As soon as you go outside your comfort zone, you stand there for a while, it's your new comfort zone. It's bigger. So, it's been, transformative for me. And I think ultimately it will be, if you take a 2 or 3 election cycle and a longer term vision too about how starting these new movements and networks and parties can help us prepare for the way we're going to have to govern ourselves in a time of increased disruption, then, I think what a great service everyone who was involved in the process has done to starting that conversation and that journey.
It's like the genesis, isn't it, of the new? It's like, It's like, that initial drop in the ocean, like you guys with the initial drop.
Yes.
Yeah. Which now has a life of its own.
Yes, it does. So after my holiday, I'm also going to think about getting more people. Well, I don't even have to think about it. The people have rung and emailed and said, how can they be involved? And I always thought that I would stay with this until a few months after the election and then get a new committee in, and one with broader skills, and, and they can kind of, I'll still be involved, obviously. But, I think it's and I'll be involved in a formal capacity for as long as it takes. But in my mind, it was always start it up, get some bones around it, get people on board, get some funding, get some structure, set some, help to set a culture, and then stay involved, but hand on to the next. I like new energy coming into things. I think it gets stale if people stay. And I've seen a lot of organisations do that. They just get to a certain point and then they just, some people in places have stayed for like 20 years. And I just think I've actually never seen it work. I'm sure there's examples where it's worked really well, but I've seen a lot where it hasn't. So anyway.
So what would you say, like, again, I've got this feeling that the people who are going to resonate with this episode are, people who are in leadership positions or have the potential to go into a leadership position where what they're bringing is provocative and new, and there's, they feel compelled, right? They feel compelled to go here. What would you say to them?
First of all, I'd say go for it. Second of all, I'd say let's all connect with each other through Giselle. Well, it's like one thing that I've noticed, I had a few people that I could talk to, but there's not a lot of people that do this sort of stuff. So it's actually really important to have people around you. And look, if these people will already be, if someone was listening to this and they're just starting out on that journey, I'd say, a couple of the most important things is get something, like really work out what it is. And I don't mean a goal or a strategy in the normal sense. Work out what it is, like why you are doing this, and keep going back to it. So for me, it was, this needs to be my joy, not my burden.
Yes.
That was the foundational thing for me.
Yeah.
Everything else I knew, but I needed somebody to tell me that and put that idea in my head. And that might sound really simple, but it's not. It's just, so get your thing, one or two things that you're going to be able to keep coming back to remind you of why you're doing it. And for me, I think that's much better if I think you need to have a personal one as well as a external one. You need a personal guiding light. And then be prepared to lose some of your old. It's funny that you bring up the person who had an alcohol addiction, because, that I've lived with an alcoholic before, and one of the things that people do who drink, their tribe or their other people who drink get really uncomfortable when you stop drinking. Because it's what they're used to. It's that we've all got our own plate, and suddenly somebody's going off script, and coming from that sense of tribe, you don't like a disruption in the tribe. So people who are, if people are starting out on something new and doing sort of this entrepreneurial leadership, they'll already have an existing tribe in whatever it is who will not be comfortable with them doing it differently. So I think the second most important thing is to recognise that relationships will shift, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And for me, I didn't even think about it. I never think linear in a linear sense anyway. I never think from going from A to B. I see us more as all little network positions on a soccer ball. You know how soccer balls have got little octagons, and it's an octagon itself, and it's all connected. So I just felt like I was shifting to another space. For me, I like that visual rather than I'm leaving someone behind, because that presumes I'm somehow better than them.
Yep.
I'm not better, I'm not worse, I'm just going to another space. I'm on a different octagon on the soccer ball, and who knows, I may see them around the other side, but it's not for now.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important, because, relationships will shift.
Yeah.
And then the last one was really important for me, is just to have fun with it. Like if I went through a space where I wasn't having enough fun, and that happened a few times, I'd actually just stop. I'd just stop doing it for a couple of days or a few hours or whatever it was, and do something that was funny, which is why I'm becoming a comedian.
Another expression. I love it. Well, it's light, isn't it? It's light.
Well, yes. And I, during the campaign, I was asked to come to a comedy show and tell the people there why I decided to run for politics. And I thought, well, it's a comedy show, so I should make it funny. So I did. And people were really laughing, not just politely chuckling. And it was taped, and I put it up on Facebook, and it had like 11,000 views in a week, or just,
Yeah.
And when I got off stage, I said to my husband, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, it was just before the election was formally called.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll wait till after the election, and then this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so that's why my comedy show, I've created my own show. And I'm having it. I found another female who wants to tell stories, and so we're doing a show. It's ticketed event. So I just thought, I'm going to go out there and be, I'm not going to kind of just create a space in my bar and mumble into the microphone in front of a few friends. It's at our venue, but we've made a proper night. We're promoting it. You have to pay to come. I've got a MC. I'm really going to chuck some energy into it. Anyway, and that's my stage persona, publican and failed politician.
I love it.
And that was so good, because just going back to the humiliation part, it's just like, yep, that's what happened. Yep, completely right. But also it's quite subversive, because comedy's subversive. And I'll be doing political comedy. I'm not suddenly going to do dick jokes. So so it'll actually build my profile in a much more powerful way than if I spent the next 2 years writing op-eds on policy.
Yes. Oh my God. Just as you said, like 11,000 views or engagements, right? Because
views. Yeah, it's
Because
crazy.
comedy can be transformational. Like there can be it's engaging.
Yeah.
You want to capture attention. What a great way of capturing attention and speaking about something meaningful.
Yeah.
But through comedy. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's innovation. That's really innovative, isn't it? That really is. I love it. And it's fun, as you said, it's fun. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to end the way that I've ended the last two interviews. So Dr. Carol Haddad, I did an interview with her and another healer, Sammy Howard, and I asked them to make a declaration. No, what did I do? I was on retreat that I asked them to make a declaration, and I spoke to Carol afterwards, and she told me how powerful making that declaration was and what has happened as a result. So when I had Shari here yesterday, who you love, and as I said, I love the fact that I'm doing back to back with both of you. And, you know, one of the big things that she said yesterday was about, you know, through the doorway of conflict is beauty.
Lovely.
Lovely, lovely. I asked her to make her declaration yesterday. So I'm going to ask you to make a declaration. What wants to move through you right now?
So I want to honour all of the people that showed, that were inspired, gave time, showed a hunger for trying something different by making sure that I keep stepping into vulnerable leadership rather than shrinking back out of the spotlight and into somewhere more comfortable.
If you enjoyed this episode or previous episodes, I would so appreciate you sharing the love and letting your family, friends, and colleagues know about this podcast, because the only way that it's going to get out there is if we use word of mouth, the good old word of mouth. So I have my hands in appreciation for you, for those who have already been sharing the love. And should this part of the podcast inspire you to share amongst your network, I really appreciate you. Also, I've been saying that I am also returning to my first love, which is writing. So if you would like to receive me in your inbox every week, there is a link in the show notes where you'll be able to subscribe, and I look forward to writing to you. Have an incredible week. Thank you.